Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in the faith, I came here to remind somebody today, let nothing move you when the storm rages, when the pain won't stop, when the diagnosis comes in, when people lie on you, walk out on you, and write you off, don't you dare move. See, the enemy don't mind if you sing a little song, say a little prayer, post a scripture. What terrifies hell is a believer who refuses to quit. One who stands firm when everything in their world is shaking. Now the word says in 1 Corinthians 15:58, be steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. That ain't just poetic, that's power, that's spiritual steel. Let me preach this so deep that even your fear gets scared. You want to know what it means to stand firm when life shakes you. Let me take my time with this, because this ain't something you hear and walk away from. This is something that gets down in your bones. You don't really know what standing firm looks like until everything around you starts trembling. I'm talking about when the ground beneath you feels like it's breaking apart, when you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering if tomorrow is even worth facing. That's where standing firm starts. Let me tell you, God never promised that life would be easy. He never promised you wouldn't cry. He never said people wouldn't leave you. He never said your heart wouldn't get broken, or your body wouldn't feel weak, or your plans wouldn't fall apart. But what he did say is, I will never leave you nor forsake you. What he did say is that his strength is made perfect in your weakness, and what he did promise is that when the storm comes, not if, but when you can still stand. See, a tree doesn't grow deep roots in calm weather. No, the roots go deep when the wind pushes, when the rain pours, when the soil gets tested. You don't know how deep your roots are until the storm shows up. And that's exactly what the enemy wants to do. He wants to expose your shallow ground. He wants to push you so hard that you get disconnected from your source. But if your faith is real, if your foundation is solid, if you know that God is your rock and your redeemer, then when life tries to shake you, you stay planted. You might be crying, but you're planted. You might be bleeding, but you're planted. You might feel like quitting, but something in you won't move because God has built something unshakable in you. You see, there's a difference between being shaken and being moved. Life might shake you, but you don't have to be moved. You don't have to change direction just because the wind's picked up. You don't have to drop your calling just because it got hard. You don't have to abandon your post just because the crowd walked away. You stand your ground, you keep showing up, you keep praying even when it feels dry. You keep loving even when it isn't returned. You keep trusting even when there's no visible evidence to support it. Standing firm means saying, God, I don't understand it, but I still believe you're good. It means saying, I don't see a way, but I trust that you'll make one. It means lifting your hands in worship while your heart is breaking. It means standing in the fire and still declaring that your God is able. This world will try to convince you that standing firm is weakness, that you should run, that you should shift, that you should lower your standard, bend your conviction, or compromise your integrity just to feel a little more comfortable. But comfort is temporary. Conviction is eternal. And if you let the world move you, you'll end up far from the path God designed for you. But if you let the word anchor you, nothing will be able to move you off the purpose He's put inside of you. Sometimes standing firm means not answering that call, not sending that text, not going back to what God pulled you out of. It means trusting the no, just like you trusted the yes. It means waiting when you'd rather fix it. It means staying in that quiet place with God when your flesh wants to scream. That's spiritual maturity. That's unmovable faith. Let me tell you something. Real strength is silent. It's not always loud or flashy. Real strength is being able to endure without applause, to stand alone in your conviction, to be the only one believing when everyone else gave up. That's when heaven starts clapping for you. That's when angels stand in awe saying, look at that one, they didn't move. Jesus showed us how to stand firm when they mocked Him, when they betrayed Him. When they beat Him, when they nailed Him, He didn't back down. He didn't call angels to rescue Him. He stood firm in His assignment for you and me. And if He did it, You can do it too because that same spirit lives in you. So I don't know what's shaking you right now. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's loss, maybe it's rejection, maybe it's pressure, but I came to declare over you, you will not be moved. You were built for this. You were prepared for this. You were born for such a time as this. Stand firm, child of God. Heaven is backing you. The blood is covering you. The promise is waiting for you. So go ahead and plant your feet. Wipe your tears, square your shoulders, and let the storm know you might shake me, but you can't move me. Because the one who called you is faithful, and he will finish what he started. Faith is not a feeling. Let's get that straight from the start. Feelings come and go. They change with the weather, with a phone call, with one piece of bad news. But faith, real faith, stands when everything else falls. Faith says, I know who God is, even when I don't like what he's doing. That's not emotion. That's decision. That's rooted conviction. That's what separates those who talk about faith from those who walk in it. You ever notice how feelings will lie to you? They'll whisper things like, you're not strong enough, God doesn't hear you, or nothing is changing, so why bother? Feelings are like shifting sand. One moment they lift you up, the next moment they bury you. But faith is a rock. It's planted. It doesn't need perfect conditions to operate. Faith says, even when I feel low, I will lift my eyes. It's not denial, it's defiance. A holy defiance that stares fear in the face and says, you don't get to decide how I move. People who live by feeling are tossed by every wind. They're up one day, down the next. Joyful 1 hour, hopeless the next. But the ones who live by faith, they have something deeper holding them up. A power that doesn't depend on good news, on approval, on support. They stand on a word, and that word doesn't shift, shake, or shatter. That word stands forever. Faith is not just believing God exists, it's trusting what he says when nothing else makes sense. It's obeying when the results don't match your expectations. It's building the boat when there's no sign of rain. It's marching around the wall when the bricks haven't moved. It's lifting your hands when your heart feels heavy. That's what faith looks like. We got too many people waiting to feel right before they move. Waiting to feel strong before they take the next step. Waiting to feel peace before they trust God. But here's the truth, sometimes the feeling shows up after the faith. Sometimes peace doesn't come until after the step. Sometimes joy doesn't return until after the obedience. God's not waiting for you to feel spiritual. He's waiting for you to trust him even when you don't. Look at Abraham. God told him, leave everything you know. Go to a land I'll show you. No map. No GPS, just a word, and Abraham went. Not because he felt comfortable, not because it made sense, but because he trusted the one who spoke. You think he didn't feel fear. You think he didn't question it. Of course he did, but he moved anyway. That's faith. Or how about Peter? He stepped out of the boat in the middle of a storm. Don't tell me he wasn't scared, but the moment Jesus said come, Peter's faith overruled his fear. And yes, he sank when he took his eyes off Jesus, but don't forget, he was the only one who walked on water. The rest stayed in the boat, paralyzed by feelings. Peter had faith that moved his feet. That's what God's looking for, not perfect people, but faithful ones. People who say, Lord, I don't feel it today, but I'm still here. I don't see it yet, but I believe it's coming. I don't have the strength, but I know you do. You bring that kind of faith, and heaven starts moving on your behalf. Faith is not about having it all together. It's about holding on when everything's falling apart. It's not loud. It's not flashy. Sometimes it's just a whisper. I trust you, God. And in that whisper, hell trembles. Because hell knows if you ever learn to walk by faith instead of feelings, you become unstoppable. You won't be manipulated by circumstances. You won't be discouraged by delays. You won't be shaken by silence. The enemy wants you trapped in your emotions because he knows emotions are unstable. But when you live by faith, You step into spiritual authority. You speak things that are not as though they were. You call dry bones to live. You walk around walls expecting them to fall, not because you feel it, but because you know who you belong to. So the next time your feelings try to run the show, remind them who's in charge. Tell your fear you don't get to sit in the driver's seat. Tell your doubt you're not louder than God's promises. Tell your weariness, even if I'm tired, I will still trust. That's what walking by faith looks like. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. It's waking up every day and choosing God again, even in the silence, even in the sorrow, even in the waiting. Faith is a choice, and when you choose it daily, no matter how you feel, you start building a life that the storms can't destroy. Because faith is not just what you believe, it's what you live. Being unmovable doesn't mean being unreachable. Don't confuse firmness with isolation. God didn't create you to be a stone wall. He created you to be a steady tree rooted, but with branches that still stretch out. Some folks here stand firm and think that means cut everybody off, harden your heart, build walls so tall no one can climb them. But that's not the gospel. That's not how Jesus walked, and that's not what strength really is. Let me talk to the ones who have been hurt. I know you trusted someone and they betrayed it. You gave your heart and they mishandled it. You opened up and they walked away. So now, instead of being steady, you've become stiff. Instead of being rooted, you've become rigid. That's not healing. That's hiding. God never asked you to become hard to be holy. He asked you to stand, not shut down. Being unmovable in your faith doesn't mean you stop loving people. It means you love from a place of truth. It means your love isn't dependent on how they treat you. It flows from how God loves you. You don't let people change your character. You let your character influence how you deal with people. You see, Jesus was unmovable. Couldn't nobody sway him from his purpose. Pharisees tried. Temptations tried. Even his own disciples didn't understand him at times. But Jesus didn't isolate. He didn't wall himself off. He kept reaching, kept healing, kept teaching. He washed the feet of the one who would betray him. That's strength. That's what being unmovable with a soft heart looks like. Too many of us let our pain shape our personality. You got strong after they hurt you, but the kind of strong that pushes everyone away. You learned how to protect yourself, but not how to connect again. God is saying, I didn't call you to be numb, I called you to be wise. There's a difference. Being unmovable means you don't let people change your identity. You don't bend your values just to please others, but you stay open to love, to correction, to growth. You stay available to be used by God to reach others. A closed heart may feel safe, but it's not fruitful, and you weren't created just to survive, you were created to bear fruit. Some of y'all been saying, I don't need anybody. That sounds brave, but it's not biblical. Even Jesus walked in community. Even he had 12. One betrayed him, one denied him, others fell asleep when he needed them, but he still chose to walk with people. You don't grow in isolation, you grow in connection. God will use relationships to refine you, to stretch you, to teach you grace. And yes, sometimes people will fail you, but that doesn't mean you stop showing up. It means you learn how to set boundaries without building walls. You can be firm in your yes and still gentle in your tone. You can correct someone without condemning them. You can speak truth and still speak love. That's maturity. That's spiritual strength. Let me make it plain, being unmovable is internal. It's about your convictions, your principles, your foundation. But being unreachable is external. It's about how you treat others, how you allow connection, how you respond to relationships. You can stand your ground without pushing everyone off the land. Don't let the past harden you. Yes, you've been through fire. Yes, you've walked through betrayal. But don't let it steal your softness. because God still wants to use your voice. He still wants to use your touch. He still wants to use your story, but not if you're too locked up to let it out. You can be a warrior and still weep. You can stand in truth and still extend grace. You can guard your heart and still let love in. Because the strength God gives isn't brittle, it's balanced. You're not made of glass, you're made of faith, and faith knows how to withstand pressure without turning cold. Think about a lighthouse. It stands firm on the rock. It doesn't move when the waves crash, but it still shines its light. It still serves its purpose. It still guides others through the storm. That's you. You're not meant to disappear into the background, trying to protect yourself. You're meant to shine while standing firm. Let God heal those deep places. Let Him soften what life tried to harden. Let Him show you how to be steady and still sensitive. Let Him teach you how to love without losing yourself. Because people may come and go, but who you are in Christ must remain. Being unmovable doesn't mean closing off. It means standing tall while still reaching out. It means not letting this world distort your love, distract your call, or dry up your compassion. It means staying kind in a cold world, staying generous in a greedy one, staying hopeful in a bitter one. And if you can walk through this life rooted in truth, but still open to love, you won't just survive this world. You'll transform it. So stand firm, but don't shut down. Stay planted, but keep your heart open, because God is not just using your strength, He's using your spirit. And through you, He's still reaching others. The ground may shake, but God doesn't. That's the kind of truth that'll carry you through anything when life tilts sideways, when everything you counted on starts falling apart, when you can't even find steady footing to stand on. That's when you hold on to the fact that God does not move. Your situation might change, the people around you might shift, the plan might fall apart, but the God who spoke the world into existence, He's still on the throne. He hasn't moved an inch. You ever been in a season where it feels like nothing stays the same? One day you've got peace, the next day you've got panic. One moment you feel strong, the next you're breaking down. You thought you had people in your corner, and then you looked around and realized you're standing alone. Everything seems to be shaking: your emotions, your finances, your confidence, even your faith. That's not a small thing. That kind of shaking will make you question everything. But it's in those moments when the ground is trembling that you've got to make a decision. Will I stand on what I see, or will I stand on what I know? Because what you see will tell you to give up. What you feel will say it's over. But what you know, what the Word says, will remind you that God is not shaken by storms. And if you're standing on Him, you don't have to be either. Hebrews 13:8 says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That means the same God who opened the sea for Moses, the same God who shut the lions' mouths for Daniel, the same God who raised Lazarus from the dead. That God is still moving, still working, still faithful, and still steady. You're not anchored to culture. You're not anchored to the economy. You're not anchored to your own understanding. You're anchored to a rock that never crumbles. You ever seen a building during an earthquake? The ones that fall apart are the ones built on weak foundations. But the ones that were built deep, built solid, built intentionally, they may shake, but they don't collapse. Why? Because it's not about how pretty they look on the outside. It's about what's holding them up underneath. That's your faith. That's your walk with God. That's your prayer life. That's the word you planted in your heart when things were calm. Now it's keeping you from falling apart in the storm. God is not shaken by what's shaking you. He doesn't panic when you cry. He doesn't run when the enemy attacks. He doesn't flinch when the report is bad. He doesn't fold when the pressure rises. He stands, always. He reigns, always. He sees all, knows all, and holds all. And if that God is for you, then what and who can stand against you? But the problem is, most of us look at the shaking and forget the source. We measure God by our situation instead of measuring our situation by our God. We see the storm and start wondering, did God forget me? We feel the fear and start thinking, maybe He's not listening. But let me remind you, the storm doesn't mean God left. Sometimes He lets the ground shake just to show you that your foundation is stronger than the shaking. Sometimes He allows the pressure just to prove what He built in you. You're still here, that alone is proof. Everything tried to shake you, but you're still standing. You cried, but you didn't quit. You stumbled, but you didn't stay down, and you want to know why? Because God was your strength. Even when you didn't feel Him, even when you didn't understand Him, He was holding you up when you didn't know how to stand. That's who He is. And I need you to understand something. If you only trust God when everything's calm, that's not trust. That's convenience. Real trust is when you hold on to Him while everything's falling apart. Real faith is when the earth beneath you is giving way, and you say, even if I lose everything, I still have Him, and that's enough. That's when heaven leans in. That's when the devil backs up, because a believer who knows their God is unshakable becomes a threat to everything that hell tries to send. So when the ground shakes, when people walk away, when the doors close, when your plans fall through, don't panic. Plant yourself deeper, dig into the Word, press into prayer, remind yourself of every promise. Don't chase stability from the world when the only unshakable source is God Himself. And don't just remember what He's done for others, remember what He's already done for you. The prayers He already answered, the times He already carried you, the doors He already opened, the peace He already gave when you didn't deserve it. If He did it before, He can do it again, so take a deep breath. Wipe your tears, look the storm in the face and say, I will not be moved. My God is still in control. Because while the ground shakes, my God doesn't. And if He's holding you, nothing can take you down. The enemy doesn't just attack you with force, he attacks you with timing. He waits until you're right on the edge of breakthrough, right on the border of your blessing, right at the doorway of your deliverance, and that's when he tries to shake you the hardest. Because the enemy knows what many of us forget. If he can get you to move too soon, to quit too early, to retreat one step before the promise, then he can rob you of everything God has prepared for you. You've got to understand this pressure often increases right before something breaks open. That resistance you feel, that weight on your chest, that fatigue in your spirit, that's not just life wearing you down, that's spiritual warfare trying to push you off your position. Because the enemy isn't threatened by your past, he's terrified of your future. He knows what's coming. He sees what God is building in you. He's not reacting to who you were, he's reacting to who you're becoming. Right before the Israelites crossed into the promised land, they faced the Jordan River at flood stage. Why then? Why not during dry season? Because the enemy wanted to intimidate them out of stepping forward. He knew the moment they crossed, everything would change. And some of you are standing at your own Jordan right now. You're looking at a situation that feels too deep, too dangerous, too impossible. And the voice of fear is loud. But you need to know you're closer than you think. The resistance is a signal not to stop, but to press in. The enemy wants you to equate discomfort with defeat. He wants you to believe that just because it's hard, it must not be God. But some of the greatest moves of God begin in the middle of great pressure. Ask any woman who's ever given birth, the pain is most intense right before the delivery. And if you walk away too early, you miss what you've been carrying all this time. Some of you have been praying, fasting, fighting, pressing, and you're tired. You're worn out. You've been obedient and still haven't seen the results. That's when the enemy whispers, just let go. What's the point? But let me remind you of something. The enemy's voice gets louder when he knows he's losing ground. The attack increases when heaven is getting ready to release something over your life. He's desperate because your breakthrough is near. There's a moment right before harvest when everything still looks like dirt. You've sown, you've watered, You've waited, and nothing seems to be changing. But underground, beneath the surface of your life, roots are forming, strength is being built, and life is about to break through. But if you walk away from the field now, you forfeit the harvest that was already in motion. Think about Jesus in the wilderness. After 40 days of fasting, tired and weak, the devil shows up to tempt him. Not at the beginning, not halfway through, but at the end. Because the enemy knows most people don't fall at the start, they fall right before the finish. And if Jesus had moved from his identity, if he had bowed down, if he had turned stones to bread just to satisfy a temporary hunger, he would have missed the greater plan. But he stood firm, and the angels came, and the ministry began. What if you're right there? What if the attack you're facing is the final test before the release? What if your faithfulness is being weighed right now? What if your consistency under pressure is the very thing opening doors in the spirit? You can't afford to move, not now, not this close, not after all the tears, all the prayers, all the nights you held on when no one else knew how close you were to giving up. You didn't come this far just to come this far. There's too much on the other side. See, God is not just watching your actions, He's watching your endurance. Can you stay when it's not exciting? Can you trust when you can't trace Him? Can you keep building when the crowd disappears? That's where real faith is forged. That's where real growth happens. That's where warriors are born. The blessing you're waiting for isn't coming because you're talented. It's not coming because you're perfect. It's coming because you stood. When others ran, you stood. When it didn't make sense, you stood. When it cost you everything, you stood. And heaven records that kind of faith. That kind of unshakable resolve moves the heart of God. So here's the word for your soul. Don't move. Don't move out of fear. Don't move because of pressure. Don't move because it's taking longer than you thought. Stay planted. Stay faithful. Stay locked into what God told you, not what your feelings are telling you now. Because the enemy wants you to break down before the breakthrough. But God is saying, if you just hold your ground, I'll show you why it was worth it. And when He shows up, when the floodwaters part, when the promise is revealed, when the door swings open, you'll understand that what you thought was delay was actually divine setup. So don't move, not now. Not with the finish line this close. You're almost there. When you stay standing through the storm, through the fire, through the pressure, through the silence, that's not just survival. That's testimony. That's spiritual impact. When everything in your life says you should have broken down, should have walked away, should have turned bitter, should have gone back, and yet you still stand, people see that. Heaven sees that. And hell feels that. Your stability in the chaos preaches louder than 1,000 sermons. Your unshakable faith becomes a living message that says, my God is real, and He's enough to hold me. You see, we don't just witness with words. We witness with how we endure. We witness with how we suffer, with how we trust when nothing's changing, with how we praise when nothing feels good. That's where the real power is. When you're not shouting about God from a mountaintop, but holding on to Him in a valley, that's faith that draws people in. That's what makes someone look at you and say, what do they have that I don't? How are they still standing? God never wastes a storm. He never wastes a tear. He never wastes a hard season. What you walk through and survive becomes the very platform He uses to reach others, and not when everything gets better. Sometimes it's in the middle of the fight. Sometimes it's while you're still bleeding, while you're still trusting. That's when your life shines the brightest. There are people watching you right now. Not just your friends and family, but people you don't even know are paying attention. They see how you carry yourself. They see how you respond when the pressure's on. And whether you realize it or not, your stability under pressure is ministering. It's showing them a different kind of strength, not self-made, not performance-based, but supernatural. Somebody is learning how to stand because they saw you refuse to fall. Somebody is keeping the faith because you didn't let go of yours. Somebody's watching how you stay faithful in the small things. They saw you go through betrayal, loss, setbacks, disappointments, but you didn't stop serving. You didn't stop showing up. You didn't stop loving people, and that shook something in them. And let me say, this God takes note of all of it. Your private battles, your silent tears, the nights you stayed up praying and nobody knew, the moments you kept showing up, even when your heart was broken. Every act of obedience in the middle of your own suffering is building a testimony that will one day deliver somebody else. Because you can't teach what you haven't lived. You can't lead people through a storm if you've never stood in one. And God will let you go through it, not just for you, but for the people coming behind you. What broke you in one season becomes the breakthrough for someone else in the next. Your scars become maps. Your wounds become instructions. Your journey becomes evidence. There's someone right now who needs to know it's possible to go through hell and still believe. It's possible to lose people you loved and still love God. It's possible to be disappointed and still declare, God is good. And guess what? You're that proof. You are walking evidence that you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be planted. You do have to stay. And staying doesn't mean you didn't feel like quitting. Staying doesn't mean you didn't cry or question or struggle. Staying means you didn't let those feelings pull you away from God. You may have limped, but you didn't leave, and that kind of resilience carries power. Let me tell you what the devil hates. Not just loud worship. Not just Sunday morning attendance. The devil hates consistency. He hates that you still get up and pray when nothing's changed, that you still quote scripture when the pain is still present, that you still trust when the results don't match the promise, because that kind of consistency, that steady, rooted faith, is dangerous. It's dangerous because it multiplies. Your endurance empowers others. Your stability starts movements, and what started as you barely hanging on becomes a testimony that shakes your family, your workplace, your church, even generations you'll never meet. You want to glorify God, stay steady, keep standing, keep trusting. That's how He gets glory, not just in your mountaintop moments, but in the fire when you say, even if He doesn't deliver me the way I expected, I'm still not bowing. That's the kind of faith that glorifies Him. That's the kind of life that leaves a legacy, so don't underestimate your endurance. Don't downplay your consistency. You may not have all the answers. You may not feel strong every day, but every time you decide, I will not be moved, you are declaring the power of a faithful God to a watching world. And when the story is told, it won't just be about what you went through. It'll be about how you stood through it, and how God showed Himself strong through you. Let the wind blow, let the critics talk, let the trial test you, but you stay right where God planted you. Don't bow, don't break, don't back up, because the one who is in you is greater than what's trying to move you. Let nothing, and I mean nothing, move you.